Welcome to the Talking Engagement podcast. I'm your host, Amy Berry, and in this episode we'll be talking to a group from Balmoral State High School in Brisbane, one of my all-time favourite schools to be connected with. Balmoral State High School is a vibrant, future-focused learning community committed to the vision of inspiring excellence and guided by the core values of agency, innovation, and belonging, as we're going to hear about in this episode. The school aims to empower every student to take ownership of their learning and thrive in a supportive, inclusive environment. Student voice and agency are central to Balmoral's approach, and these are not just aspirational words at this school. They have been committed to co-constructing their approach to engagement with their students from the beginning. And today we have the pleasure of having one of their students join the conversation and share his insights and experiences in supporting the school's engagement work. In this episode, we're joined by Year 9 student Peter Donald, who is passionate about getting involved in all aspects of his school. In 2025, he was junior secondary captain, and Peter is particularly passionate about all things aviation. We also have Balmoral's head of pedagogy and performance, Zena Carusi-Lees. She's a lifelong learner with expertise in adult learning and literacy. She was a contributor to the text Reading to Learn, Reading the World, How Genre-Based Literacy Pedagogy is Democratizing Education in 2023. And Zena is definitely one of my go-to people when I am looking for inspiration and motivation. And rounding out our panel today, we have Principal Timothy Barraud, a dynamic educational leader recognized for driving transformational change in complex school environments. Known for his strategic clarity, inclusive leadership, and commitment to equity, Timothy shapes learning environments where every student is supported to thrive and flourish as an individual learner. So let's dive into the conversation and learn more about Balmoral's ongoing journey with engagement. I would just like to formally welcome you all to the podcast and thank you so much for joining us and sharing the really interesting and inspiring journey that you have been on in relation to engagement. So maybe we might start off with the head honcho, Timothy, starting and introducing himself, just a little bit about Balmoral, and then we'll introduce each of our other guests, and then start talking about the journey that you've been on.
Cool. Sounds good. Hi, Amy. I'm Timothy Barraud. I'm the proud principal of Balmoral State High School. Balmoral is 62 years young as a school, and we have an incredible legacy of many popular sporting icons, but also academic people who have come through our school. What's lovely about Balmoral is it's got that country feel in a city, but we're very much surrounded by water, and also it's that sense of community that really brings us all together in our purpose, in our direction. And I think it doesn't necessarily matter if you're in the private or state system in our community. Everyone does recognize and value basically what Balmoral has to offer in terms of education and its outcomes. So yeah, very proud, but more importantly, it's wonderful to lean into students, be at the forefront of the work, and be a passenger as a leader, to be fortunate enough to be a passenger in design and co-construct in its purest form to improve school and transform school culture. That's by far the most remarkable leadership journey I've ever been on, and that's what we're doing right here, right now.
Excellent. Okay, and who else have we got joining us today?
Okay, I'm Zena Carusi-Lees, and it is my great privilege to be part of the leadership team at this school, and specifically I get to do a lot of work around pedagogy and performance. So where I came into this space is that we'd been talking about students and changes in students and how that was reflected in the classroom. Lots and lots has been written about disengagement, not so much about engagement. And what has brought us to you and to your work is our search for how to engage our students so that they have agency in the classroom. And I'm really excited about what we've done and even more excited about where we're going, Amy.
Yeah, me too. Okay. And we have got one more very special guest, VIP today.
Yep. Hi, Amy. I'm Peter. So as one of the junior school captains of Balmoral for 2025, I've sort of seen firsthand what the sort of what's happening in the classrooms and with the engagement and everything. So I can see from when I was in year 7, before we had this engagement accelerator, to now when we do have it, the differences from the students and how they've been sort of acting in class and out of class. It's tremendous from the efforts that the teachers have put in to help students stay on track and everything. And then also the students themselves keeping themselves on track and also referring to the teacher when needed. And it's been pretty cool to see it firsthand, definitely. But yeah, really glad to be here today.
That's so great to hear. And also to hear you recognize and understand that this really is a partnership, that it's not just down to the changes that have been happening for the teachers and the way that they're doing things, but to recognize that the success that you've experienced there is also down to the changes that have been happening with the students and the efforts that they've been putting in as well. So great to hear all the different perspectives coming together here. So maybe we might start with giving a little insight into how the journey began. What was happening at the time and what caused you to want to really look at your practices and improving the engagement of your students in classrooms?
Okay, our journey began a little bit before Timothy arrived. And when Timothy then arrived, he embraced it with gusto, and I'm really thankful for that. As I said before, it was the large piece of work that's been happening around the world in terms of students being disengaged for very many reasons. And this is something reflected in every school in Australia. It was also reflected in our school. And if we were going to do something about it, we needed to do something differently. So that's how we came into this, looking for some solutions, looking for the sorts of actions and framework we would need in a school if we were going to turn that disengagement around and have students actually engaged and owning their learning. So that's where we entered this piece of work, Amy.
Mm-hmm. And what brought you to the engagement continuum then in particular as a possible pathway?
I think what was nice about it really distilled, I guess there's different levels. And so it was about recognizing that with engagement, there is ways of working and there's ways of leveraging improvement yourself as a learner when you move up the continuum. And so what was really nice is for practice in terms of the classroom, it's about being deliberate. How are we giving feedback to students in the moment around the type of engagement that is expected with the task or activity, or how we can give feedback in the moment, say, this is fantastic, you've all just participated, this is what we need to do next. So it's almost like here is the verbal cues in our instructional practice that we can give students to give them improved agency in their own learning in the moment. That was really stood out for me as part of how I could see it operating in a classroom.
I mean, and typically what happens when we're talking about disengagement, we kind of fall into this trap of automatically thinking about finding problems and fixing problems.
Yes.
It's like this real deficit approach when it comes to engagement. And it sounds like you very quickly moved out of that kind of thinking, if you were ever in there at all, Timothy. But you know,
we were.
Okay. But you quickly saw this as a bigger opportunity around building capacity, but really tapping into those ideas of student agency and autonomy, and building the capacity of learners. So was that an easy step to make?
In our context, it has been great. For me, as when I first came to the school and I walked around and I was in classrooms, I was like, oh, wow, my students are beautifully passive, right? And so there's a level of high compliance and high trust. And I was like, this is the right environment to go and strengthen some of the work. And so the staff could recognize that, and they could really understood when I was talking about who's doing really the heavy lifting in the classroom. Mostly it's going to be the teacher. The teacher's one like controlling everything. And I'm like, well, and I'm saying that in terms of our briefing, I'm saying, let's flip the script and actually think a bit more about how we can advance the work that students are doing, because you're giving them those cues and the feedback in terms of what you're expecting. And we're just being deliberate in terms of our practice. And so I think that was a really good entry point to start to figure it out. And then I think we made a really big commitment as a leadership group in all of our strategic drivers to have students co-design with us. And so Zena and myself invited Peter along to help us, I guess, co-construct. And we were just really transparent. This is the engagement continuum. This is how we think it can operate in the classroom. And we're saying, what's your advice? What do you think? And we started to have those open conversations, and they went for like half an hour, 40 minutes to an hour, once per week. And we started to dig deeper into, if your teacher were to say this, do you think this would have a really positive impact on how you're reflecting as a learner? And that opened up a really great conversation with us as the leadership team with the students. And then we started to figure out, okay, rather than being like on a continuum, just like on a whiteboard, what about if we were to think about it as like a accelerated, like a car driving, you're going up and down, and there's movement. So it's almost like giving the freedom and permission to a teacher to say, your lessons aren't always going to be at the same strategy. Even in a lesson, you might have multiple different types of things depending on what's happening in the classroom. So let's give you that agency to go, actually, I can do different things and different tasks or activities because that's required in the lesson.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that's kind of where we got to.
And I think, it's a unique situation, really, because generally what happens in schools is the leadership decides, hey, we're going to do this thing. And then it kind of moves down to the teachers and being looped into, hey, we're going to do this thing. And then maybe, not always, but maybe it might then involve the students being told, hey, we're doing this thing. Now, you haven't approached it that way at all. And in fact, I love this idea of bringing your students in from the very beginning so that, as a community, we are together from the start and everybody's voices are in on it. And I'm really interested to hear from you, Peter.
Yeah.
What did you think when you first started to be a part of those conversations?
Well, when it first started, I sort of had no idea what anyone was talking about, I guess. It was brand new to everyone in the school.
Sure.
And then as we were working on it throughout the weeks and months leading up to the start of the year, we were sort of like, there was multiple different students there. So we had all the different ideas coming through from your different perspectives and everything. And it was pretty cool to be a part of that sort of firsthand and work it out from a student's point of view, because so often you just are getting information from the teachers and stuff, but to actually do it as a student, it really sort of opened everyone's perspectives up and sort of showed them like how we want things to run as a student, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's super cool, isn't it? Because, doing that really says through actions and not just words that we value your input here. We can't know things that you know from your perspective. We need you if we're going to make this really work. So, I think it's just such a courageous but also inspiring way to go about it.
Amy, I think in your book you talk about pushing and pulling. And I would say as a teacher, I've been exceptionally good at that. But I have recognised, as other good teachers have recognised, that that's just simply not enough. And whether it's even relevant to 21st century learning. So I think that part of that was that it wasn't what we were doing to students, that it opened a level of conversation and transparency in classrooms, which initially I think frightened teachers a little bit. They felt that their power base might be shifting.
Yep.
Because we'd gone from talking about behaviour to talking about learning. And they caught up and recognised that behaviour was still behaviour.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah.
you talk about learning, you were encapsulating so much more, and the conversations were so much richer. So I think that that concept of pushing and pulling has stuck with me, for those reasons. And it is when Timothy talks about the flip, I think that's really important. And it has been a flip that we're trying to move forward with as a school group, and indeed with the parental body too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
everyone has to come on this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I mean, you've walked the talk from the start. You've modeled for your teachers and for the rest of the students what this looks like. It's not that you've just told them, hey, you need to now consult with your students and get their voices. You've said, we're going to do that from the beginning. We're going to take the risk and jump on in and lead by example, to make it a little bit easier for you too, and safer, because you've taken that leap first. Now, I'm interested in, it's a big school, and, there's a lot of people involved. My guess is that everybody isn't moving at the same pace, that you will have had some who are really keen and ready to go for it. And I'm talking here staff, but also students, some who really are just into it and, yep, this is useful. I want to do this. And then some who take a little bit longer to get to that point. How have you managed that? And then I'll come to you, Peter, as well, to see, what your perspectives on that too. But how have you managed that with your staff?
I talk about it every time I'm in front of basically my students and my leaders, but also my staff as well. So we often have a briefing, and so I had referenced it for the last 12 months in a briefing in some way, shape or form. And now we've gone to the next degree of talking about how we're showing up in meetings, either as a leadership team, what's expected. Are we, in what pace are we looking at driving at the moment? Are we looking at investing? And what's the feedback that we're thinking about ourselves in that reflection moment? And I'm now starting to do that process with staff. So it's a way of working. I think that's we're trying to embed across multiple forms, not just in the classroom perspective, but rather how are we showing up for one another as our ecosystem collectively, and how are we enabling our learning partners to share that moment with us. The part that sits with all of this is around it's ongoing, it's frequent, it's set by the leadership of the team and the school, to make sure that we're really focusing in on this is our work on engagement. And I think what's nice for everyone, as I said, it's not going to change. Our commitment to engagement is going to be the work forever to come, and we're just going to mature in the way that we're doing it as a school.
Yeah. And look, anybody who's been involved in schools, as we have, knows that inevitably you might get those teachers who have been around for a while, and who might take the view of, if I just wait around long enough, this too shall pass. And so, sometimes there can be a reluctance there because they've seen so much change. It's a bit of change fatigue sometimes.
That's right.
And, I think being aware of that, but as you say, with this consistent and very clear message that this is how it's going to be. We are committed to this, not just for the now, but, for the foreseeable future. This is how we're doing it.
Amy, just to that little bit of anecdotal feedback, I was in a intentional collaboration meeting, which is what we call what used to be our faculty meetings. And one of those teachers that you have just characterised used the words driving, used the words investing. And I thought the penny has dropped. If we're getting people acknowledging that is happening, we are on the right path and we're moving forward. So, it has taken some time, I might add, but we're moving forward.
Well, I mean, what you're talking about here is applying the same principles that we hope our teachers to be applying in the classroom to the whole school. So talking about embedding this in all that we do, about using the language, about being really intentional, about being committed and sticking it out, but also allowing people acknowledging that people will come in at different levels of readiness and motivation, and allowing everybody to be on their own journey and travel at their own pace, which is what we need to do in a classroom as well. So, Peter, you get a different insight because of your position as a student in the school. Can you see differences in your peers around you in terms of people being really into it and seeing the value of it, and others taking a little bit longer to see it as a useful thing?
Yeah, definitely. In some of my classes, I can sort of see all the students, not all the time, they're not all driving, but they want to be there and the teacher runs through it, and the students can see, well, this is what I want to do this lesson, so I might just participate and sit back and just take notes or whatever. But then other students might actually be pushing themselves for their own learning. And it's really cool to see, especially from when I started in year 7, like the difference between how it is now to how it was then. But it does change between classes, and some students, they are sort of taking their time on realizing, well, I need to at least be participating sometimes. I can't just be withdrawing all the time. And it does change depending on the teacher and the classes, but I have noticed that most of the students sort of have an understanding around the engagement accelerator.
And we'll get to the accelerator in a minute, because I know I just spoke to a principal yesterday whose ears pricked up, and he was very excited about their possible next steps in learning from you. But for yourself, Peter, how was it for you? Was it kind of easy to grab onto and start to play around with? Did you find it a little bit hard or challenging? What was your experience like?
Yeah, from myself, I would probably consider myself sort of a leader. I constantly am moving forward. I drive my own work even before this came through. So it was easy for me to sort of realize, okay, so they want me to do this, I'll do this, and then I'll continue to drive in my own learning. Yeah, so it was pretty easy for me, although there were some sort of challenges with actually understanding what all the words meant at first. Now that I know them, it's pretty, it was definitely very easy for me.
Okay. Yep. So I think it does pay off. The words themselves are deceptively simple. And, I mean, that's on purpose. So that is accessible. I've got preschool teachers using it, parents can understand it. So the words are simple, but it's the meaning behind them, and it's making sure we're all on the same page and understand them in the same way. That takes some effort, and also takes some effort to make sure we stay on the same page, because people can drift in different directions. So I think, Timothy, you saying that we are using it all the time is a way that we stay on the same page and keep it meaningful.
Yeah.
So, Timothy and I were recently at an event together, and I had the privilege of facilitating a panel where you got to share the wonderful work that you've been doing. So in that, there was a clear message that there has been an evolution to this work, that it's not just we're going to introduce this in term 1 and then it's kind of done, that this work grows and evolves and goes deeper and expands, and you adjust things. So it's kind of a living thing. Can you tell me a little bit about how you went from the continuum that you might have, first seen and heard, to your very cool own version of the continuum, the accelerator that you've been using? And I can see it in the background.
Yeah. No, so we had, as a leadership group, we've got a core team of people who meet, and they were the ones who introduced the students as part of it. So it's like a tactical strategy team, and so that's part of our pedagogy team. And so they're the ones who canvas ideas, come together, collect, and more like touch points. What's happening on the ground? What does it look like? How's it working? I do have a really big aspiration, I'll let you know. My aspiration as a principal is that it would be so cool to have both students and teachers together walking into a classroom, having a rich conversation that happens after that classroom observation and say, what did we see the students doing? And what I would like to do, and this is my moment, if I get to this point in my school, I know that I've reached a really good personal pinnacle for me, and that will be around that co-construction of observations that involve both students and teachers.
Like a walkthrough you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and having a rich conversation after, and then saying, if we were to do that, and we were to do that, on one day in the term, amazing. Imagine having the lift up of saying, this is what both our students and staff saw as great practice. Let's elevate this to the next level. So that's what we're trying to work through, and what it could look like and how it could work, knowing that that will help to lead transformation. So to go back to your other question, when we had a look at, the continuum was great. It was really clear, and that's when we started to get the students involved. But because what we made a decision was, like withdrawing, avoiding, we thought, actually, if we went to the positive piece around, there is an expectation that if you're coming to class and you're coming to school, you're going to be in that classroom, you are just going to be participating is the bare minimum that's expected. And so we had a really good conversation with the students around this and said, there's actually processes and systems in place. If there's a student who is presenting to a class, who wants to avoid, who wants to withdraw, we've got things for that student that can access the class to go in a sensory room, or they have access to do that. So in terms of that was really clear, and I guess we were doing that on purpose, and then said, okay, at the back there was we had really big posters and all of that, but what we found is that there was no reference to the engagement continuum in the practice of the teacher, or it was sort of basically hit and miss because they weren't with it. So it was, let's bring it to the front of the classroom, front and center of a teacher's mindset, but also give them, I guess, the opportunity to consider the notion that pitch and pace of a lesson is really important. And so if you've got students who are presenting in a certain way to your class, or there's something that's gone down in a particular lesson with the friendship group, you know that you can give the students a clue or an indication to say what's expected in the lesson, task, or activity, and allow them to have knowledge around the fact of, okay, I'm going to have to actually, invest in my learning. I'm going to have to answer these questions and demonstrate this level of investment in this activity because that's what the teacher's expecting me to do. And the teacher has given that clue to me to go, all right, I know that, I need to do a bit more. And therefore they'll get more engagement in terms of the activity or task.
So you're talking here about teacher clarity, about being really clear and explicit and intentional about how they can engage in this learning and what's expected.
Yeah. And if we are highlighting and marking to the students, because our students are beautiful, they will raise the challenge, right? They will, because we're telling them what we need. They'll just do it. So, and that's the beauty about our context in our classes here, is that if we're deliberate and we're explicit, our students will understand and will be able to measure up to what we expect. So that's why we've sort of done that strategy in that pathway. Yep.
Yeah. And I think everything about what you're saying too resonates in terms of you need to think about your context when, it's not just a matter of taking something and just slapping it down and saying, this is what we're doing. You have to think about where you are, because you need to think about your areas of strength as a community and as a school, and building on those, and also the areas that you need to attend to. Now, if we've got another school where it's a very different context, and there is not that feeling that students are feeling that they trust everyone, that they're willing to engage, that we need to spend some time creating that those relationships, that trust, that feeling of I want to be here and I feel like I belong here, before we can up the stakes. But because you already had that in place, you were able to kind of zoom forward a little bit because you'd already done the hard work of those relationships and getting to that place.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's been, I mean, it's we're going to hit some more rocks as we continue on, and it's like the introduction of, when we have new staff members, we spend a lot of time sort of talking about the language, talking about how it's used in the context. And I think for me, I know that I've got to keep it alive and well as part of my instructional leadership piece, as part of how I'm talking to staff, and part of how I share the journey with our parents as well. And so it's deliberate around, this is the intention behind it. Keep us honest. And if you're not hearing this as part of it, well, then we've got some work to do further, and making sure we're just honest with our work.
And authentic. This is about being authentic. If we're going to be partners, we have to trust each other. We have to believe in each other. We have to think that we got each other's backs, all of those things. Now, some people, when I mentioned to them that, Balmoral has got this really cool way of doing it, they have an accelerator and they have added another level beyond driving. Some people are a bit taken aback. Oh, and how did you feel about that? They want to know from me, how dare them kind of thing, And I think, I've never thought that. I've always thought, cool, great, tell me more. And as I've explained to you, I don't have innovating on my continuum because my research did not give me evidence that of the teachers and of the students that I have spoken to, that there was anything beyond driving, that this was not something that was in their daily experience and that they talked about when I spoke to them. So that's why I don't have it on mine, just because I didn't have any evidence of it. It's not to say that it isn't possible and that we could be doing more within our classrooms and schools to make that a feature of everyday learning. So I love the fact that you are courageous and pushing boundaries and saying, no, I think actually there's more. There is more possible than driving. So why don't you, I'm trying to decide who should introduce innovating. We could, you choose.
I think
Who's going to talk
Peter.
about innovating? I think so too.
And going.
Tell us about innovating, Peter.
Well, with innovating, it's sort of, the next step from driving. So with driving, you're sort of pushing your own work and then you're asking the questions, doing all that. But with innovating, you want to, what you're wanting to do in that lesson. The teacher may only have this stuff set out, but you're wanting to get this done. So you're actually researching, you're asking questions, you're doing your own work to get your own result, not worrying about anyone else in the class. You're just focusing on yourself. And that's what I love about it, because I can have people on the opposite side of the room doing whatever they want, but I'm actually focusing, I'm getting the outcome that I want from that class that day. And I know that I have actually achieved what I've gone to school and done for that week. And whatever class it is, I can always somehow I managed to get that sort of innovating sort of aspect through, but not always. You have to take a step back. You can't just constantly be innovating, or it stresses you out and you get too bogged down with things. So it's a nice sort of area to be some classes, but you have to make sure you're sort of taking a break from it, I guess.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point, Peter, that, I always talk about it as like a highway, or a freeway, and having different lanes. And a really skillful learner and motivated and passionate learner knows how to navigate all of those lanes, not just one lane.
Yeah.
And so, you're right in saying innovating and driving, for those of you who are more familiar with driving, it takes a lot of effort and energy. It's great, when we're kind of in that zone and that space, but we can't keep that up forever. And so we need to know when to shift lanes and how to shift lanes, but always with that mindset of that our goal is to try to get to those high levels at some point. So that's a good explanation. Thanks, Peter. Yeah.
One of the things that links with some of what Peter mentioned there is often as teachers, we don't allow the space to innovate. We
Yeah.
have it neatly drawn at the driving line. Everybody must stop there because that would indicate that they know more than the teacher or they're going into unknown waters. One of the subjects that Peter's involved in is one where students come together on a problem-solving mission that's linked to outside companies. And over the course of 6 months, they work on innovative solutions to things that don't currently have solutions. So if you find those openings in the curriculum, in the school, you are innovating. And that's, for people like Peter, who's, I'm describing him as someone who was born driving. This is really exciting. And this is what keeps him engaged with school, which can be a bit tedious, as we know.
Well, and I think, I have 2 kids, as you know. They're grown now. I've got a 30-year-old and a 29-year-old. They did very, very successful at school, did very well, went to university, did all of that. But when I showed the continuum to my daughter, she said, "Oh, Mum, I spent my whole school life moving between avoiding to participating, like that kind of bit of the continuum. That was her whole school life." And she was very successful at school as a student, just doing that. And so I think this is the issue that we have, is that a lot of students have learned how to play the game and how to play it quite well. But that doesn't lead to thriving and high levels of well-being. That's just a job where I'm just turning up and ticking somebody else's boxes, and then going home, clocking on and clocking off. And we know, we want more. We want more as people. I'm sure, Peter, you don't want to do that all day, every day. It's boring. So we want more for people. We want better for our children and young people. But it was a real eye-opener for me to hear that feedback from my daughter, to say, somebody who was on the surface, getting all these awards and all this recognition for doing so well at school, but actually underneath, not thriving at all at school. Now, we've talked a little bit about the impact. So maybe we can think about the impact on yourselves, and your roles and your experience at school each day, and maybe impact that you've seen in other people, or stories of success, maybe. And I'll let you decide who starts. If you go.
I'll need a minute to think about that one, actually.
Okay, fair enough.
If I look at teachers as a whole, because that's been my brief, looking across the curriculum, for me, it's about the flip. It's about moving from this focus that has been teaching, that is behaviour, curriculum and behaviour, and that's what constitutes the classroom, to this idea that they're co-constructing learning within their classroom. Now, again, it's not across the school. We are, I believe, very successful in what we're doing, but that doesn't mean that there aren't incredible pockets of success and places where we would like to further that. That's normal. But I think teachers are recognising that there are different ways to do it, especially with students who are as complacent as our students.
I love the idea of all staying on the same page and having this shared vision and goal, but allowing people to the freedom, the flexibility to be creative in the way that they might approach that in their own space and in their own way. What about you, Timothy?
Look, it's been a phenomenal journey to be part of and sort of lead. Like when I first started, I got to the school and they were like, engagement is what we're focusing on this year. I'm like, fantastic. So what does that look like? Cricket. But what are my look fors? And so that's where we sort of really started with going, let's open up this can and let's go explore and go deeper. And I think it's what really hit for us, as I've explained before, around the type of students that we have here, and the environment that is created. We come, and last year we did a lot of work on a new vision statement, inspiring excellence, and that's about personal excellence. And we have 3 core values. And for me, these values underpin everything that we do as a school and also guide us, not only me as a leader, but also all my staff and my community. We want to emulate these values enacted, and we want to make sure that they're, very transparent. So our values are agency, innovation, and belonging. And so for a learner, we want them to have agency, and we want them to have their own personal agency when it comes to scaling up, understanding where they're up to in their learning journey and where to go next, because they effectively have that level of personal agency to go, this is what I want to do and this is what I want to tackle in life. Just like innovation, we're deliberate about the fact that we're pushing the envelope and we're trying to do things differently for purpose and trying to make sure that we're a contemporary learning organization for our kids and our community. Belonging is that sense of belonging, connection, and community. We're deliberate. We are intentionally inviting our community to connecting with us, but also we're leveraging learning partners to make sure that we're giving the best opportunity for our students and also for us as learners, for us as leaders. Who are we leading, who are we learning in with, and who are we leading, but more importantly, who are we connecting for learning as a journey. The impact has been transformational. We're seeing some great impact. Behavior has reduced. The levels of incidents and things like that we've seen in our school, we're sitting really, really well. Attendance is getting better. So it's starting to have momentum in the right way, and we're positioning students front and center in that journey, which is where all education should be, front and center with students right at the core of it.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, Peter, have you noticed any changes yourself in your kind of experience in the classroom and your thinking about learning?
Yeah, definitely. In some of my classes, I've noticed that the teacher will actually, like while we're going through our OneNote and stuff, like the teacher will go through and say, well, you just need to take notes here or actually do your research here, and sort of guide you along that path. So then you're not just sitting in the one boat. And then that sort of changed. I've seen that this year, and it changes on what class you're in. But yeah, I've definitely seen a huge impact on students' performance while this has been introduced. And yeah, so it's been pretty cool to be right here in the center of it as it's been happening. But yeah, there's definitely been a lot of good changes come from this.
Yeah. And I suppose it's like getting a new pair of glasses on, right? You just start to see things in a different way, notice things that may have been happening, but you didn't pick up on it, or you weren't thinking about it in that way. And that's, often how I like to think of it too. Sometimes the change is more subtle, and it's just more like having a different pair of glasses on and just seeing things in a different way. So I like to end with top tips. It's how we ended every one of our focus groups in our last research project, and I think it landed really well. And it kind of fits with my whole reasoning for this podcast. Most of the time when I talk to schools and hear from schools, what they're really wanting is ideas from other people. They want to learn from other people's experiences and get ideas from other people. So here is an opportunity from a school that is just doing amazing work and much farther down the path maybe than a lot of schools who are coming to this work, to learn from your experience. If you were asked to give some top tips to people who were just starting out with it, what would your top tips be? And, I want you to think about what makes sense from your perspective. So, Peter, your top tips might be your top tips to students who might be exposed to this in the classroom, and what would you tell them about how to engage with it, and then right through to teachers and school leaders.
Yeah, definitely. Some top tips I would give would be, don't stick in the same sort of, don't always be driving. Take a break, step back, watch what other people are doing, because it's nice to, if you're just participating, when you're watching other people sort of driving and investing, it sort of brings that spark up in you and going, I want to be doing that. That's what I want to be doing. And yeah, so there's a few tips, and yeah, just don't always be by yourself, always work with the team, because when you're working with the team, you have multiple ideas, you have multiple people, and it helps you in that sort of driving and investing sort of segment. It's not just participating and sitting back.
Peter, that is music to my ears to hear you say all of that, because I've just finished the next book. And one of the chapters in that book is around engaging with peers, and peers as partners in engagement. And I've just gone out on a bit of a limb myself and talked about the advantages of looking to other people to help us boost our own motivation and engagement in something. So I might be a little bit flat and coasting along and participating, and looking around and seeing other people being a little bit more engaged, invested in driving, can give me a boost to want to get more engaged too. And also, as you say, the real benefits in engaging with other people, sharing ideas, challenging each other's thinking, is a great way of boosting our engagement as well. So, phew, I was on the right path then, according to what you were saying. Thank you for that. Okay, what about you, Zena?
I would say that pursue the meta language, pursue that ruthlessly until it becomes embedded in the school, because that's going to be your cornerstone. So if everybody understands the meta language, if people are starting to move into a zone, if it is foregrounded in classrooms in the form of posters, in the form of student diaries, the more opportunities you have to build a culture that's built around those words and what they mean, you're really starting to embed that culture within. Yeah. The other one would be consistency of messaging, and I'm sure Timothy will talk about that, because without that, you become, certainly as someone whose zone in the school is focusing on teaching and learning, I can't be a lone voice. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It has to be a shared journey, and that's going back to the collaboration you've mentioned, where people are invigorating me and vice versa, so that you are moving forward. The final thing I'd say is gather your data and be creative when you're doing it. So yeah, surveys are great. We did one of the ones that sits in our minds is the fishbowl activity at the very beginning. Bring students into your leadership meetings. Find different ways of getting information, whether it's observational, anecdotal, or whether it's based on percentages. That's going to help you drive forward, and has been a very big part of our journey too.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Consistency with messaging, yes, but also understanding how the lever. So we talk about engagement and agency and wanting to do right by our students, but also be at the forefront around how we can make this better, but how we can make our culture in the school better. So what sits alongside that is, how do we communicate this to the students? How are we being deliberate in our practice to say, we're going to give you the verbal cue to say this is what's expected, but also this is reinforcement, positive reinforcement. Fantastic. You've just been able to get yourself here and live in the moment. So we talk about the notion of a live lesson. And so, we've got lessons that are both live, but also the stuff that happens at home, like online and that type of thing. And so how are we creating those modes and opportunities? So if we're thinking about this, I would say have the courage to know that it's going to be messy along the way, but while you might start on a journey, you might end up in a different location, but that's okay, because you've gone through iterations of the work. And that's very much fine. The next thing I'd say, lean into your students and the voices they have, but also the wonderful, honest perception they give you. That is by far the most important thing that I've learned as a leader of a school, is that if you lean into your students, they will tell you exactly either what you want to hear or what you don't want to hear, but they will give you the honest insight that you need to go, this is the piece of work we need to work on. This is something that I've learned, and therefore let's harness a bit more about this. And the last part, when we first started, it was about, but where's my agency as a staff member? I think 12 months on,
Yes.
that doesn't exist. So it's the maturity of our organization, because we have been honest, open, and vulnerable about us moving through a transformational journey. And so we're not there yet. We're on our way, but we've had really good wins. And I think our community is starting to recognize that we're a different school now, and that more important, our students are coming and participating in our lessons very differently to what it was, prior to 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I was fortunate to be with you just at the start of this year, and working with you and seeing, where things were at that time point. And it brings me such joy to see how far you've traveled in the space of a year, and to get that sense of real momentum that has grown and built along the way. It's just inspiring. So I am very happy to have you on the podcast. So grateful to all three of you for sharing your insights and helping others to learn from you. And I know that there will be many more opportunities to have you on again, because honestly, I could record a whole season of episodes just with you. There's lots to learn. And so I already have in my mind many other things that I want to talk to you about along the way. So I'll be in touch for a follow-up.
Love it.
Right. Thanks,
Thank
Amy.
you so much. Thank you. And Peter, thank you so much, superstar. I mean, I feel so privileged because I don't often get a chance to talk to students, and it's always such a joy, and I always learn from the experience. So thank you.